Detective 1.
You will not be the same person after playing Disco Elysium. Now, wow, hold your fucking horses. That's a big statement. Oh wow, this piece of media is so good that I can guarantee it will affect everyone it touches. Yeah, that's not a cliche statement at all.
Maybe you're just a shitty writer. They're probably communist. You should kill them all. I like men.
Whoa. Let's keep that one inside, okay? But you see, my friend, I never said that you will like Disco Elysium. In fact, you might find it annoying or tedious or even, dare I say it, pretentious. Dumb. However, you will gain a better understanding of arts, of politics, or just how fucked up the world is, and the beauty in that fuckiness.
It's a weird experience, okay?
For me, Disco Elysium is like coffee. I remember trying coffee for the first time and spitting that shit out, asking myself, people actually drink this like every single day? And now, a warm cup of coffee before work hits me like close friend's hug. Or when she finally picks up that goddamn phone. That's exactly the feeling I get when I hear this. So imagine my surprise when I learned that Disco Elysium was fucking stolen from its creators. Did you know that there are a bunch of spiritual successors to Disco Elysium and a ton of copycats? Did you know that the development was a crazy ride? You didn't? Oh boy, then you're going to like this video. But, do not buy Disco Elysium. Pirate it. Get it through Steam key sites, anything. Just not support the current developers. That might sound like another crazy statement, but when you'll hear the full story, I hope you will understand where I'm coming from. Let me rant and rave and maybe cry a bit about the development of Disco Elysium and why it's a game that can change your life.
If an assault were launched on this building right now, if the windows came crashing down and the whole world descended upon you, this man would hurl himself in death's way to save you. You are sure of this, but why?
I think you won't be surprised to learn that Disco Elysium didn't start its life as a game. It started with a group of friends in Tallinn. Were they broke and a little lost? Oh yes, but they were also creative and stubborn enough to believe that they had something, well, worth saying. Or as with all artists, they believe that someone will listen to them and maybe give them a medal or so. Of course, I'm joking. Their main goal was to create something real, like something meaningful, that they themselves would like to experience. I think most of you can relate to this feeling, this wish, that you need to create something that touches people. Not in that way, you perv. At the center of the group was Robert Kurvitz, a writer who has spent years building a world in his head. A messy, political, deeply human world full of failure, history, and just random stuff. Now, most of this world was built through D&D campaigns and small stories from other projects here and there. But the story was just one part of Disco Elysium. The second half, dare I say even more influential, the art style, came from Alexander Rustov, a Russian-born illustrator and art director. Before Disco, he used to work as a book illustrator or on visual media. He built a reputation for a distinct painterly style, often texturized, slightly abstract, and emotionally expressive rather than just realistic. If you know anything about Disco Elysium, you know that its world is kind of bleak, even with all the expression. Honestly, living in Lithuania, I can absolutely relate to this post-Soviet torn depression. It's the feeling that Robert's world fleshes out the most. It's a depressing, beautiful mess that you can't fix or solve. Just keep moving and hoping things will be better. It's pain that brings optimism that everything, in the end, will be okay. Yeah, so it's not that strange why this whole story resonated with me so much. Robert has seen the same things I've seen, but unlike being a fucking loser like me, he actually poured that world into a novel that took 5 years to write. Sacred and Terrible Air, it was called. And it looked really interesting. But 5 years is a huge part of your life to sacrifice for a single product. So that was an achievement, a true success story. But the problem was quite simple. No one bought the book, with some sources saying that less than 1,000 copies were sold in total. Yeah, well, the market is tough, and there isn't that huge of a demand for depressing world ending stories about failures. Oh, fucking boy, that kind of failure sticks with you. 5 years. How many times did Robert think about success? About actually publishing this book to the masses? And then to hit a brick wall of realization. Your ego takes a few knockout punches. So for a while, things drifted to unknown directions. The whole ordeal caused Kurtwitz to fall into an alcoholic stupor and, well, basically put his life on a downward spiral. The group kept creating music, art, ideas for the world of Elysium, but nothing really landed. There was no core. Everybody had their ideas on how the project should look, but there were just too many creative angles to take into consideration. And like a lot of creative circles, there were moments where it all felt like maybe it was as far as it would go. Maybe they bit more than they could chew. But as they were chewing, someone had a genius idea. Why not make a video game? Was making a video game easier than any other ideas they had? Hell no. If anything, it was the opposite, since none of them really knew how to do it. And making a video game from scratch is a task not a lot can actually, successfully do. But there was something about the idea that made sense. A challenge, like freedom and restriction at the same time. Just enough balance to get those creative juices flowing again. So, in a strange way, limitations breed the best art. A game could hold everything that each of them cared about: writing, art, philosophy, politics, all ideas in one place. And most importantly, no part needed to overshadow the rest. All of their work could be explored at the pace that the player wants and desires. A slow and meaningful RPG game. Rostov painted the scenes that Kurtwitz wrote, and Kurtwitz came up with new stories based on Rostov paintings. A creative snake consuming itself. Of course, there was no money at the time to have an office, or any fancy place for that matter, so they worked where they could. Mostly in an old abandoned building, which surprisingly fits the vibe that Disco Elysium creates perfectly. Slowly and without real roadmap, the game began to take shape. Naturally, money was always a problem. The working conditions also weren't really fun. And sure, they had a goal, but they were still a bunch of friends trying to do something they never did. And the same feeling came back. They were still biting more than they could chew. The restrictions helped a lot, but it was still a mess with, well, basically no end goal in sight. Just like the first time, their idea was even more restrictions. One of them sold a car, an absurd, almost symbolic sacrifice, to fund the beginning. Actually, that was enough. They used Carl Kender's business expertise to gain funding and expand the development team into a real studio, Za
Oh, God damn it, I can't pronounce any of these names. I can't pronounce any names. Sorry, I'm stupid.
with Kurvitz as the lead designer, Rostov as the art director, and Carl Kender as the lead producer, the studio was created and funded by a businessman named Margus Linname. Now, Carl Kender, he was considered a bad boy of Estonian literature in the 2000s and 2010s because of his explicit, confrontational writing style. And of course, public persona. Overall, Kender became involved with the group when the Elysium project was already in development, so he did not add that much to the world or mechanical systems of the game. However, he was really fundamental in getting the project funded and, starting the early stage of Disco Elysium. Margus Linname is an Estonian billionaire, entrepreneur, and one of the country's most powerful business figure. He's the founder of Group, a large Estonian investment conglomerate, as well as owning a lot of media companies. With the formation of Disco Elysium seemed closer to reality than ever. In some strange way, not having game making experience made the team look at RPGs from different perspectives, try to break down why specific systems are used in video games, how can they use it or use it differently, and not just simply copying things from already existing games. For example, instead of focusing on combat, they leaned into dialogue, into thoughts, into strange chaotic way the human mind works. They came up with a system where your own skills, or more precise, character traits, speak to you, like arguing, encouraging you, hell, sometimes even sabotaging you. Okay, there is actually a lot of self-sabotage. And it turned out to be one of my favorite ideas for narrative-driven RPGs. It's basically a solo D&D campaign where every enemy is just you, but the world of Disco Elysium was the main focus of the team. They wanted to build something unique and yet still sort of familiar. And that's not an easy task. So to make the world feel more alive, naturally more of it is needed to be built. So the writing alone grew into one of the largest scripts ever put into a game. The final cut of Disco Elysium featured 1.2 million words. That's basically reading the entire Lord of the Rings series 2.5 times. Yeah, it's freaking big. Their idea was sort of simple. No NPC should be just NPC to give you directions. Each person you talk in the Revachol has their own character, history, wants, needs in life, and their own perspective on moral and politics. Of course, being artists, they always wanted more. The location of Disco Elysium at first was a huge, fully explorable map similar to Witcher 3 or Skyrim. Naturally, a game of this style and tone wouldn't work that well if everything is scattered around huge areas, and also, that was a crazy developmental task to try to accomplish for your first game. So over time, they had to scale things back, focus on the project so it could be actually finished in a state, maybe not fully finished, but at least somewhat completed. It meant letting go of some ideas, which wasn't easy, they were all passionate, but it kept the core intact. Eventually, after years of work, it was ready. Disco was fucking back, baby. Some loved it immediately. Others found it slow, dense, maybe even frustrating. But it was here. It was disco. It was disco. And then it was fucking stolen from the original creators. And when I mean stolen, I mean that this might be the craziest shit I have ever read about.
From the district of Martinez, as the bodies of 2 police officers are found floating in the canal.
A note before we start. I'm gonna leave links to a few videos that really helped me understand the situation. So, things started to change in 2021 when Linname, the original investor into the whole Elysium project, decided that he wanted out of the Zaum due to some other controversies that were going on with his popular Estonian newspaper. On its own, this meant nothing, but his wish to move away opened the gate for a predator. Linname's majority ownership in the studio was purchased by another businessman named Ilmar Kompus. Naturally, his background was mainly in business, finance, and corporate management, not game design or writing. But he saw money in his eyes, a potential. However, there was a problem. Mainly the creative core of the game, Robert Alexander and Helen Hinpere. They were artists to the heart and not only business oriented thinkers. In other words, they will not just be willing to trash or abuse the popularity of Disco Elysium just to get slightly, bigger revenue. But that's exactly what Compass planned for the AP. From his perspective, it was a milkable brand, a name, a visual style they can use to make cold, hard cash. He did not see what Disco Elysium really was, a triumphant work of art that might never be replicated. There's really no way to make a sequel or milk this game that has such a unique vibe and story. But even without knowing anything that happened inside the studio and the whole deal with the management, the simple fact is going to cause the most problems. Money and art doesn't really mix that well. But trust me, you don't know what kind of a dick move Campus pulled. Campus took over the company from Liname. That made sense. What did not make sense was that Kurtwitz, Rostov, and Kender were basically outed. In a blog post shared by Rostov and Kurtwitz, they describe what happened this way. As soon as they became majority shareholders, we were quickly excluded from daily operations. Our employment was terminated, and our access to the company's information was shut off. Our firing came weeks after we started asking for documents and financial data, which is still being kept from us. Basically, they started asking questions that big money men did not want to answer. Kender was fired for very similar reasons, not agreeing completely and asking questions about the future of the franchise. Crazy, right? But you might say, wait a minute, what was the fucking plan here? Like, without the guys who created the original game, the writers mainly, how the fuck is the studio going to make money? Releasing DLC for Disco Elysium? Since, I don't know, without the creative core, you definitely will not make anything close to the quality of Disco. So, what was their plan? I think just to make money through advertisement and merch? Yeah, they acquired one of the most creative and impressive game developers in the current day just to run them into the ground and get a little bit of cash out of it. Wow. Talk about not seeing the forest for the trees. Jesus. However, that's not the crazy part. Company gets bought, the main guys get fired, and company goes to shit. Right? We've all seen that. Well, the way Compass managed to acquire Zaum is either genius or insane, and I can't make up my mind. You see, I did not mention one thing as of yet. There was another company that owned a portion of Zaum. Yes Sir, No Sir Ltd. The director of this company was the girlfriend of a guy named Tonis Havel. And he is definitely not the guy you would want to hang out with. Back in 2016, Tonis was fined over 12 million euros for being involved in a pyramid scheme that he tried to start in Azerbaijan. A sign of great businessman, being involved in a pyramid scheme, and a shitty one at that. How was he related to Disco? Havel worked at Zaum as the executive producer for Disco Elysium. He had his way to manipulate the entire company. So, still not that crazy, right? A con man now leads your art-focused game development company. Not great, not terrible. But Tony had a plan. The original majority shareholder, Margus Liname, was looking for around 4.8 million euros. That's a lot of money. And Havel and Compass managed to pay him for the company with the funds from the company. Wait, what? Yes, Havel with Compass took money from Zaum to buy Zaum. How? Well, by making Havel's girlfriend the one owning a company that has some part of Zaum, sells some physical concept art sketches to Compass for £1 sterling. Do you see where this is going? Compass took the same sketches, which cost £1 sterling, and sold them back to Zaum for, you guessed it, 4.8 million euros. They just made those 4.8 millions basically out of thin air. He reimbursed himself for buying the company by money from the company he was buying. So after the takeover, Compass started to have a systematic campaign to remove the core creators from the company. And as we know, he was successful. It actually really hurts to see these creatives being played out of like their own company they build with sweat and tears by some snakes that care about money, money, money. Ironic how an art collective started not about the money, ended up being only about the money. That's Disco Elysium level of bad lucks, baby. But Zaum and the original creators had beef that is hard to untangle. Here are some Zaum devs talking about Robert. Tulik described the Elysium's creator as incredibly magnetic person who didn't have enough leadership skills. I don't think he understood that to lead is a burden, not a privilege. Kurtwitz didn't know how to properly communicate with employees and, for example, could easily scrap 4 days of work that other writers showed him. Speaking about the toxicity allegations, Tulik noted that Robert's approach taught him how to handle criticism and be better professional. But others may have taken his comments more personally. 9 months leading up to the launch of Disco Elysium, the whole team was in mega crunch, so devs took several months to recover. However, Kurtwitz's time off dragged on, as he was supposed to start conceptualizing the sequel, but allegedly didn't do much work while the rest of the team was making the final cut. According to the lead artist Kaspar Tomsalu, both Kurtwitz and Rostov checked out from most of the management work that had to be done after the release of Disco Elysium to improve the studio's workspace culture and resolve some internal issues. According to Tulik, Robert didn't write a single word on the final cut, and Helen Hinpere wasn't really much involved either, despite being the lead writer. This was confirmed by other writers. On top of all of this, Robert was allegedly trying to steal the source code for the Disco Elysium game, which is an understandable move in a situation like this, but it's not very legal. Basically, I don't want to paint one side as the super evil guys and the other side as angels. Both sides had some weird moves throughout the entire development of Disco Elysium. Now, the main guys didn't just give up. At the end of 2022, multiple lawsuits were filed against Compass to make him repay the money. And you know what? Good fucking news! The money was repaid to the studio. Every single cent. Kender dropped his case after that, but the damage was already done. And also, Rostov and Kurvitz were really angry. They still pushed to be punished. Their case against Zaum had 3 main accusations: fraudulent takeover of the company, misuse of company's funds to gain majority control, and wrongful dismissal and loss of IP control. I would like to inform you about the good news, but with all the information I can find, the cases did not go like the way Rostov and Kurtwitz wanted. Most of the accusations were either dropped or resolved. Zaum claimed that it is solved. That is it. Everybody can forget this case. They own Disco Elysium, and Rostov and Kurvitz can basically suck it. Luckily, it seems like Rostov and Kurvitz are not backing down. They are pushing for more coverage of what's, in their eyes, is a scummy takeover of the AP they loved and developed for years. Now, I think that they might have won some part of the case. Why? Well, do you see Disco Elysium 2 anywhere? So maybe they managed to take back the IP. This overall situation is just sad, since I would like to see, Disco Elysium 2. But on the other hand, I'm really happy that the who owns Zaum now at least couldn't completely steal the Disco Elysium IP. I guess you can't be too against capitalism, or capitalism will come to destroy you. Now, of course, by now you probably understand that the creators that worked with Disco Elysium are insanely passionate, and Disco Elysium changed gaming forever. So you can bet your sweet ass that there are a bunch of spiritual successors for Disco Elysium.
The code 31 emergency? Really?
The lieutenant crosses his arms with a bemused look.
What's happening? Good for you. Rock on, then. What?
Who's the one in charge? You are.
Are you kidding me? It's my what on? Sheesh, okay. Okay, you psychopath. I see what you're doing there. It's jacked up footwork, plus is that Ubi folk dancing?
Nah, it's not Ubi folk. It's hardcore.
Yeah, whatever. Oh yeah? I did 15 years in the juvenile crime unit. I can do age inappropriate. Now, check this shit out.
The lieutenant begins to heel kick the church floor with such intensity, it's reasonable to fear he'll kick a hole right through it, causing the floor to crack and the pillars to collapse, bringing the church roof down on all of you.
But first, let's talk about what Zaum is planning. In March 2025, Zaum finally revealed what it has been working on since the Fallout, an RPG codenamed C4. The studio described this as a mind-warping story of espionage and team building in an original yet achingly familiar setting. Now they immediately try to move away, like create distance from disco. Instead, citing influences like John Le Carré, Ursula K. Le Guin, Philip K. Dick, and Stanislav Lem. However, if you haven't played Disco Elysium, you would probably not be able to separate these two different games, right? Because I don't know what sources were they citing, but so whether it can live up to its spiritual predecessor is another question entirely. And I can answer this question for you right now, since I've played the demo. Zero Parades for Dead Spies is really boring, sameish feeling, safe, uninspiring, unfocused copy of Disco Elysium. This game is just Disco Elysium one more time. The art style feels downgraded rather than evolved. It feels the same from the distance, but there's no single thread to connect this beautiful tapestry that the world of Disco had. You, again, wake up without remembering stuff, but instead of it being easy to relate situation, getting fucking drunk since your life sucks, now it's a complicated mystery that even the devs don't seem to have any idea where, actually to go with it. The music, again, it's a clone, but there's nothing unique about it. There's nothing gripping. The controls are basically the same. The gameplay feels just kind of disco, just in places worse. And I'm sorry, even the setup sucks. Spies are not that interesting than, a personal drama of a super hobo cop. Are we going to have espionage and betrayals in our spy game? Oh my god, who could have expected that? Look, I'm gonna do a full video comparing these games. I just kind of want to rant a bit here, okay? Because the writing and voice acting is, my god, I can't explain this. Holy hell. The voice for Disco Elysium is like an angel singing in my ear.
Strikes you as sadly empty. You can't help but feel that saber you picked up might just give this older king a little more panache and better reception. Come on. Kings and sabers are so played out.
Do you notice how he reaches all the needed highs and lows without actually pushing his voice too much? You never feel like this guy is overstretching or pushing to reach a specific sound. In fact, he sounds more relaxed and chill. That's why the dialogue sounds so natural, flowing from one crazy voice in your head to another. In the new game, the lady is obviously pushing way past her range.
Obvious. The opera wanted him to know what sort of spy he'd be working with.
While she sounds good in the more relaxed parts, you can start to hear like the cracks in her voice and just how much she pushes herself. The accent, the way she pronounces words, it's just so, I don't know, ear grating.
AKA the freezer, where the old, useless and discredited are assigned to wander the climate-controlled hexagonal galleries until they're
I can see the voice actress puffing and huffing in the voice booth just to like reach the same vibe as Disco Elysium had. Probably one of the worst casting choice for a game that has like a billion words. And the dialogue, like the older I get, it's gonna sound cringe, okay? But the older I get, the more I like value actually good dialogue because it's so fucking hard to write, like good conversations. And this just doesn't have the edge, doesn't have the balance. It honestly feels just like a copy, like a Temu copy of Disco Elysium. That's what I'm calling it. Temu Disco Elysium. Well, just 2 days later after that big announcement, Zaom made another announcement. Disco Elysium was coming to Android. According to the studio head, Dennis Havel, yeah, the same Havel, the goal was to captivate the TikTok user with quick hits of compelling story, art, and audio. I hope that for you that sounded exactly like it sounded to me. Fucking TikTok. TikTok and Disco Elysium are like the most opposite fucking things that are even possible to exist. Yeah, the deep philosophical and political story where one random guy can talk about race theory for like hours. Yeah, that story is definitely going to be hip, as they say it with the kids, right? They can't focus for 5 seconds. Even subtitles need to be fast now. I mean, unless Disco Elysium looked like this, Jesus Christ, oh my god, I can't. At the same time, the studio has leaned further into merchandising, as I said, including high-priced novelty items that feel, well, strangely disconnected from the spirit of the, original game. Again, a game that is against capitalism is now turning into a project solely focused on capitalism. So, when all this shit went down, almost overnight, multiple groups, many made up like by former Zaum members, began forming new studios, each one in its own way trying to carry forward the spirit of what Disco Elysium has been. At one point, at least 5 different studios were effectively competing to create Disco Elysium's spiritual successor. First, there's Red Info Ltd. This is one that, on paper, looks like the true continuation. It includes Robert Kurwitz, Alexander Rostov, Helen Hindeper. The company was formed back in 2022, with trademarks filled and directors appointed soon after. And then, silence. No major updates, no confirmed project, just a studio holding some of the most important creative minds in modern RPG, quietly existing in the background. But we do know that they have trademarked the name Corypheans. And it's been in the works since they formed in 2022. Then there's Dark Math Games, co-founded by Carl Kender and featuring talent like art director Timo Albert. The studio also secured a 7-figure investment from Group, whose chairman, do you remember? Yay, it's Margus Liname. Yeah, he was the previous major shareholder in Zaum. So the gang is sort of back. They announced a project titled XXX Night Shift in October 2024 and have already moved into pre-orders, making them one of the more commercially active successors, like so far at least. However, they also seem to be shifting gears away from isometric gameplay, turning their game into a third-person RPG called Tangerine Antarctic. Keep an eye for this one. Next is Longview Games, led by CEO Riaz Molla. The studio brings together a different mix of people connected to Disco Elysium, including Lenval Brown, the iconic narrator, and Martin Luiga, a founding member of ZA. Their project Hometown is currently in development, but the studio itself hasn't been without, well, problems, with criticism aimed at Mullah's other ventures and business practices. The game, however, looks like Disco Elysium 2, and I'm definitely going to try it after it comes out, just for the narrator. And finally, Summer Eternal. It includes all these names. I'm not gonna say them because I can't pronounce them, so just read them, okay? Unlike the others, Summer Eternal operates as a worker co-op, with 75% ownership held by employees. A structure that in some way feels closer to the ideals Disco Elysium itself explored. But even here, things aren't simple. The studio became entangled in the legal dispute with Longview Games, which delayed its ability to begin work until April 2025. So we have 5 games that are supposed to compete for the title of Disco Elysium 2. But what if I told you that there are actually a shit ton more of games trying to be Disco Elysium? First, Sovereign Syndicate. Victorian settings, skill system similar to Disco Thoughts Cabinet. Often called a mechanical clone. It's not hard to see why, but the game doesn't seem to have the power of Disco, to say at least. Then we have Broken Roads, post-apocalyptic Australia. It has morality system replacing traditional alignments, and it tries to replicate philosophical decision-making, at least to a bit. Esoteric Ebb, surreal, introspective RPG. This is honestly the game I'm looking forward to playing the most, since it leans heavily into inner monologue style writing and it's just funny. I would say it's like the best interpretation of Disco Elysium system in a more D&D setting. You're of course some sort of police officer or cleric in this case. Of course you lose your memory, and of course there are thoughts talking to you. But it feels more of an action game with like dungeons and monsters. A really funny game. You should give it a try. Then we have Rue Valley, small town psychological RPG. This one had like really big marketing that is going to be crazy good Disco Elysium like RPG. It focuses on personal narratives and dialogue systems. This is quite the opposite. I actually did not even complete the first part of this game. You know why? Because there's a fucking part in the intro where you have to wait. Yeah, I repeat, you as the player have to actually wait for the story to move forward. And the game didn't even like throw me any juicy bone before that, like to think about it. Terrible, boring, unfocused clone of Disco. Then we have Necromancer Tale, a narrative-heavy RPG with like really strong writing focus. It's more traditional but clearly influenced. This one feels like a cheap copy of a few like core ideas of Disco with thoughts, decisions, and lots of reading. But just look at the game. Hey, that's all I have to say. And there's even more inspirations. I'm tired talking about them. Oh, Jesus. There's even a pirate game that is clearly ripping the Disco Elysium dialogue and choice system. Honestly, there are so many games that Disco has affected. Now, do you understand my statement about Disco Elysium changing people? And I have this idea of playing through clones of Disco to find the one best inspiration. If that would be something you like to see, leave a comment letting me know.
The man stands at the far end of the shipping container. It's hard to say anything more about him. You cannot make out any of his details, but you do feel the overwhelming presence of capital. The feeling causes all the hairs on your body to stand at attention, like soldiers preparing for review. Something's amiss. The light beams bend around his face and scatter in 1,000 directions. It seems the laws of physics do not apply here. They are suspended, distorted, and echo.
So yeah, I think that's it for today's video. I wanted to share my thoughts about just like why I love Disco Elysium so much, but I think I'm going to do a comparison with the new Zaum game to see where it fails and Jesus, my voice cracked. What the fuck? To see where it fails and to see the hidden beauty of Disco Elysium. So if that's again what you want to see, subscribe to the channel and I'll keep you updated. Okay, go play Disco Elysium. I'm off to go be a hobo. Bye, bitch.